about the Babas.
Unakataa kusaidiwa, unapata unaishiwa, unasahauliwa.
About the Ashanti.
Usiharibu biashara, unajua vile kuenda tukizoeana maigo zugonga.
About the European conquest
Kila mtu
and everything else to do with African history.
anajipenda hata kama unajipenda hatuta.
Yesterday Isaac read Amber Jewel was telling me it's our story, not his. History means his story, but it should be our story. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it shouldn't be his story, it should be our story. So welcome to the show.
Ile kuenda tukizoeana na mimi hapana kijana, mimi hapana shindana.
The song is called Bluff. It's from Nyashinski's new album called To Whom It Might Concern.
Nikolio bluff, millionaire nalia nikutafika kwa high space enough. Kila mtu anataka something, kila mtu anakuwa hunting. Nombo mapicha hadi church, ishi tupanga demanding.
The reason we're going to be talking about the moves is because of how they are represented in history, not just the moves, but generally how African history is represented in modern literature and in books and in any other piece of writing that you're going to see. For example, the Moors are said to be Arabs. Is that true? The European conquest, which was not really a conquest, but it was more meant to spark a renaissance, which now show, of course, the Europe was not as developed as it is right now, but it is from the conquest that the Moors going over there that now Europe got education and all of other things. But if you look at the writings, you're going to see it labeled as the Muslim conquest of Spain, the Muslim conquest of Europe. Was it really the Muslim? Why don't anyone acknowledge that the Moors were black?
Streets love me for real.
What the Babas?
Show your mind in production.
We're gonna look at modern day Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Mali, Mauritania, and Niger, which formed part of where the Babas used to live. That is, most of them lived in the current North Africa. Who lived there when? It's only when we know who lived at that region at what point of history that can be able to establish where we are being lied to. For example, is it true that the Moors are Muslims? Some writings say no, they were not Muslims, they were Mohammedan Africans. Who are the Mohammedan Africans? Mohammedan Africans are apparently Africans who are converted to Muslims by force. And what about the Muslim conquest? The period where the Muslim looked like they ruled over for quite some time. Is it true? What happened with the Roman Empire and how is it related to the conquest of the Muslim Spain? What is referred to as the Muslim Spain? What happened between 1492 and for 800 years? Writings claim that there was a Muslim conquest in Spain. Was that true? So those are some of the things that we're going to be looking at. Kid might join us later. Why don't you ever hear about how the Moors introduced knowledge in fields such as mathematics, astronomy, medicine, architecture? Why don't you ever hear about how the Moors brought about a renaissance? Not just a renaissance, they brought about civilization to Europe. Because we're going to also be looking at who was Tariq Ibn Ziyad, who they claim to have been the leader of the Moors. Was it true? What was his race? Was he Arab? Was he African? Was he a Muslim? Of course, there's a lot of things that to do with African history, because one, you never get a true representation of African history in any of these writings because they always misrepresent African history. They always butcher the facts. They always find ways to, even as I was looking for a documentary to share on the Moors, one thing that I realized was that in most of the writings, in most of the things that I came across, they did not acknowledge the Moors as black people in most of the videos that you're going to see, in most of the documentaries that have been done. What you're going to see is most of them will be referring to them as Muslims and Arabs. However, if you look at the paintings, if you look at some of the ancient drawings, if you look at some of the works that we still have, that have remained, the evidence that has still remained, if you look at it, most of the paintings, most of the works, most of the historical facts point to the Moors as being black Africans, as to being Berbers who lived in that region of Africa. That's why we're going to be looking at that and much, much more for the next 2 hours. I hope you enjoy the show. That is for those who are watching live and for those who are going to watch this show later. So let's get straight to the show, and we're going to start with this video. The reason I'm starting with this video is because I'm going to share another documentary of the Moors, which is factual in some ways, but is misrepresented. It, for example, refers to the Moors as Arabs and Muslims. And as you can see on this picture that is on your screen, that is a question that people know the facts, but has always been butchered every now and then.
Often, when we talk about race and history, the subject of the Moors stirs up a whirlwind of curiosity and debate. In this captivating exploration, we're going to unravel the mysteries and provide concrete historical evidence about the true so-called race of the Moors. In 1492, a pivotal year in European history, the city of Granada, the last stronghold of the Moors in Spain, was conquered. Boabdil, a black Muslim general and regent of Granada, surrendered after an 8-month siege by the United Christian Forces of Europe. This event marked the end of Moorish rule in the Iberian Peninsula, leading to the retreat of around 3.5 million black people. In this captivating exploration, we're going to unravel the mysteries and provide concrete historical evidence about the true so-called race of the Moors. In 1492, a pivotal year in European history, the city of Granada, the last stronghold of the Moors in Spain, was conquered. Boabdil, a black Muslim general and regent of Granada, surrendered after an 8-month siege by the United Christian Forces of Europe. This event marked the end of Moorish rule in the Iberian Peninsula, leading to the retreat of around 3.5 million black people living in Spain and Portugal, either back to Africa or dispersing throughout Europe. The Moors had played a crucial role in the cultural and scientific flourishing of the region, contributing significantly to what is known as the European Renaissance. Interestingly, the navigation techniques developed and used by the Moors and Arabs were later employed by Christopher Columbus, who, in seeking a route to India, accidentally discovered America. A glimpse into the perception of these African invaders can be found in The Song of Roland, a French epic poem. This account, describing a battle in 8th century northern Spain, vividly portrays the Africans under the command of the Saracen Abysmus. They are described with exaggerated racial features and are said to be as black as melted pitch, with the only white part being their teeth. This is a medieval illustration of the battle between the Franks and the Moors. Roland.
If you look at all those illustrations that you're going to see, one thing that you're going to notice is that some of these illustrations are very, very old to have been butchered and changed. And majority of them represent the Moors as not just black, but very, very black people. Like exaggerated black. As you had, they even in that poem, they say that the only white part in the Moor's body was the teeth. So let's see how it came to now to start having the argument on whether were the Moors black, were the Moors Berbers, were the Moors Arabs, were they Muslims?
Nephew of Charlemagne, confronts Marsil, king of Zaragoza in Spain. Note the clear black faces of the Moors. In this illustration from 1335, the kingdom of Agen in France is defended by the Moors against the armies of Charlemagne in the 8th century. A Moorish king standing before the Antichrist. Propaganda drawing of the Christians in the year 1400. Illustration of the Battle of Poitiers by Charles de Steuben in 1837. While the Muslim leader is obviously an Arab, It is noticeable that the 7 people behind, next to him, and at his feet, except for the white woman whose presence appears accidental, are all black. This illustration from 1254 shows Arabs, Moors, fighting Christians. Moorish kingdom in 1400. Notice the very black color of the Africans of the Maghreb, including
you can see even the queen, for example, in this illustration. Everything, including, because some segment of historians argue that the blacks that you see in the blacks that were there in the Moors, especially in the conquest of Spain and in later conquests that led to the European Renaissance, were slaves, were Arabics. They were slaves of the Arabs. And that is why they even refer to them as Mohammedan Africans. Mohammedan Africans are Africans who had been conquered and forcefully converted to Muslims. So they were followers of Islam, they were followers of Muhammad and the teachings of Islam, although not willingly, sometimes not unwilling, not willingly, they had been forced to convert to that. So that is another section that argues that the Moors, the black section that you see in the Moors, were slaves, were Mohammedan Africans who had been enslaved by the Arabs to help in fighting the wars that came to be, because they claim to have been wars between the Moors and the Christians in Europe and in Spain. But as you can see in this illustration, even the queen is black. So how can a slave be a queen?
That of the queen and the king. This shows a tapestry known as the Wild Men and the Moors. There are 13 blacks on the side of the Moors, including the king and queen, above and near each other. The Christian king of Spain, Peter of Aragon, receiving the decapitated heads of 4 Moorish princes of the Almoravid.
And even if you look at the heads of the 4 Moorish princes that have been presented to the Christian king of Spain, Peter of Aragon, they're all black. And as you heard, they were heads of 4 Moorish princes. So evidence, there is more than enough evidence to show that the Moors were Africans from, you can call them Berbers, I don't know, they were Africans from that northern African region of Africa right now that, of course, has is current day Mali and the rest. So there is more than enough evidence to prove that. But of course, the modern history and the history that we read, one does not even acknowledge the Moors as much as it should. That is why the narrative is always that it's the Europeans who came to Africa and brought civilization to Africa, which I understand Africa had been in a period of sleep, especially after this, between this and now the European conquest of Africa, because the Europeans also conquered Africa. That is later on, when you talk about, for example, the time the Portuguese came and started trading with the Swahili in the Kenyan coast, and later on to even when we had the Berlin Conference and the colonization of Africa. So there had been that period of sleep in between. But the narrative is always that it is the Europeans who brought civilization to Africa, but we never hear about how the Moors, for example, brought civilization to Europe in terms of culture, because most of the culture that you see in Europe was borrowed from them, as you're going to see. So we do not see, we don't always see that part of history being depicted, and even when it is depicted wrongly. For example, they call it a Muslim conquest. Was it really a Muslim conquest?
Dynasty. You can see that the heads are excessively black. This image shows the 4 heads of the same Moorish regions on the official flag of Sardinia, island of Italy, today. In 639, the Arabs embarked on a mission, part of their jihad.
Actually, even if you look at, before we continue the video, even if you Google the Moors, the definition that Google is going to give you is that the Moors were a group of Muslim inhabitants, primarily of North African descent. What they don't say is that majority of the Moors were Berbers. And if we look at images of Berbers, let me see, I don't know if I'm getting the pronunciation right. But if you look at the images of them, let me see, they were black people. Yep, if you look at their images, they were majorly black people. They were very, very black people. They have black hair, brown eyes. Yep. But now, what most of these historical pieces claim is that it was the Moors were Arabs. They were of Arab descent, and they ruled. Of course, they ruled modern day Spain and Portugal. At that time, it was called the Iberian Peninsula. From around 8th century to 15th century, they conquered. Their presence began at about 711 AD, when they crossed over the Strait of Gibraltar and conquered Europe in a period that is known as the Andulus. So that is majority of the pieces do not point to the Moors as black. They always try to depict them as Arabs and as Muslims who just were fighting against the Christians in Europe and conquered Europe, and the blacks who were with them as Mohammedan Africans, as Africans who had been enslaved by the Arabs. After the Arabs, as this video is just about to explain, that the Arabs conquered during when they were trying to spread their jihadist plan. They came into Africa, and at that time, most of the Africans had migrated from Africa. Some were in Europe, others had intermarried. So when they came, they were able to easily conquer the Africans who are living in this part of Africa. And so that is what most historians claim, and that is what you're going to see in most historical pieces, that the Arabs, as they were trying to spread Islam to the other parts of the world, the jihadists, they crossed over, came to Africa. They found that most of the Africans had either migrated to other parts. Some were in Europe, some were in other parts of Africa, but Africans who were in this part had been weakened. And so when they came, they were able to conquer this part of Africa. And when they conquered this part of Africa, they ended up assimilating Africans into the Mohammedan, into the Islam religion, into the Muslim religion. It was at that point that they now went back to Spain and conquered it. That is the narrative that is spread.
To spread Islam through war and establish political control. This campaign led them into Africa, starting with Egypt. By this time, many of Egypt's indigenous black population had migrated elsewhere, and those remaining had mixed with lighter-skinned groups who had ended the region's pharaonic rule a millennium earlier. The Arabs' conquest of Egypt allowed them to absorb its rich knowledge. Their expansion continued into Libya and the Maghreb, regions predominantly inhabited by the original Berbers, known to the Romans as Moors. The term Moors comes from the Greek and Roman Mauros or Mores, meaning black. The Moors had diverse religious practices. Some were Christianized by the Romans, while others followed traditional African animism, worshipping Amun as the sole deity. The Moors...
Of course, we're going to talk about the religion part later, as they are depicted in modern history, and of course try to get the real truth behind, because they claim that most of them, they claim that there were some Moors, as you heard the word Moor means Amun, black. So they claim that there were some Moors who had already been converted to Christianity, that is by the Christians in Europe, because that part of Africa is close to Europe, and at that time there used to be wars every now and then. So they claim that some Moors had already been converted to Christianity, but majority of them were still following the African spirituality way, and they worshipped Amun
as the sole deity. The Moors, famed for their formidable fighting skills, including women leaders, resisted the Arab invasion for 30 years before.
So they claim that they were the Moorish war, the Moorish Arab war, that is after the Arabs, the jihad, they were trying to spread jihadis, and now they came into Africa, and they found that majority of Africans had already migrated, and the remaining one, the black Moors, I don't even have to say the black Moors, because Moors were Africans. So the Arab and the Moors fought for 30 years, and then the Arab won the war. They were able to assimilate the black, the Moors, into to be part of them, to be Mohammedan Africans. And so they claim that it was at that point that they went into Spain and, of course, now fought the Christians in Europe.
Succumbing. Consequently, the region, once known as Mauritania, the land of the blacks, in Roman times, was forcibly converted to Islam. In 711, as Europe grappled with the decline of the Roman Empire, it faced a new challenge. An army led by the African general Tariq ibn Ziyad, comprising mostly black soldiers, landed in Europe. Their arrival was initially welcomed by local populations, discontented with the Visigothic rulers. The Moors, under both African and Arab leadership, advanced as far as southern France before being repelled at Poitiers by the grandfather of Charlemagne. They then retreated to Spain, Portugal, and Sicily, where they played a crucial role in revitalizing these regions for over 7 centuries. The period historically known as the Saracen occupation of Europe was largely led by Africans, while Arabs were a minority in this Islamized population.
Of course, we're going to be looking at the Saracen occupation of Europe. That is when they say Europe became civilized. Before then, it wasn't as civilized as it is now. And of course, that was when they introduced education. That is when they introduced science. That is when they introduced. That is when at least Europe became a little bit more civilized.
It was predominantly their culture that the Africans introduced. However, racial prejudices from Arabs towards blacks often strained relations in the region. The African approach to occupation differed significantly from other conquests. Rather than seeking to exterminate or culturally dominate the European populations, they maintained a relatively hands-off approach. They did not force language changes, eradicate Christianity, or aggressively alter local cultures. Their influence was mainly in political governance, with a particular interest in the appointment of bishops. In Moorish Europe, the societal status of women was notably more progressive than in contemporary Europe or the Arab world. Both black and white women enjoyed freedoms that echoed those of women in ancient African societies. They participated in various professions and were not subject to veiling. The Moorish rule brought remarkable prosperity and advancements to Spain. They introduced a blend of African, Arab, Persian, and Indian knowledge, significantly reduced taxes, and were passionate about education, establishing 17 universities across Europe. They also founded advanced medical schools and urbanized Spain with paved roads, street lighting, and public amenities like baths and mosques. Innovations included air conditioning.
Yeah, so one of the other feature that comes about in the Black Moors rule was that it was a very just one. That the historians actually, some historical books actually say, use the word tolerant. It was a very tolerant and just one in terms of religion under the Moorish rule, especially during the early and the middle periods. Although Muslims were the dominant ruling class, that's what some history books claim. Christians and Jews were also allowed to practice their religion. Back then, they were known as the Thimi, the protected people. They just paid taxes, and they were allowed to coexist harmoniously. The Christians and the Muslims. There was tolerance. So, in terms of justice and law, it was also the same, where the Black Moors rule in Europe was just, unlike the European rule in Africa later on, which was more of murders, more of oppression. The Black Moors rule in Europe was a just one. Some historical books claim that it was based on Islamic law, Sharia. Others claim that it was based on the law that had been set then. But they all agree that it was a just one. It was during that period that Europe was able to have the cultural and scientific flourishing. It's actually called the Golden Age of the Al-Andalus. That is between the 10th and the 12th century. That is after they had taken over in the 7th century, at around 7th century. Before now, they they ruled for up to the 15th century. So between the 10th and 12th century, that was when even the Europe is, that period in Europe is called the Golden Age. It was when it became a center of learning, a center of art, a center of culture, because the Moors promoted education. They established libraries. They encouraged translation of texts from Greek, Roman, and Persian sources into other languages. So that was the period of, if you look at the comparison between the black rule in Europe and the white rule in Africa, because the whites did come to rule Africa later on, for many years. I think they still do. You'll see a difference, a very big difference, in that the black rule in Europe after the conquest was more of, even the Moors was more of them trying to help. It was more of them trying to have the people civilized. It was more of them bringing about, there's a reason it was actually called the Golden Age, because it was that time that Europe saw cultural and scientific flourishing in terms of education, in terms of libraries, in terms of culture. But if you look at the same many years later in Africa, it's the opposite. It was based on oppression and racism and a desire to just rule over people.
Heating, piped water in homes, and a thriving silk industry. A standout figure of this era was the black scientist Ziriab, a renowned botanist.
Actually, some pieces claim that the locals in, for example, Spain, preferred the Moorish rule over the traditional one that they had, the Visigothic kingdom. The Visigothic kingdom was, that is prior to the invasion. There was they used to be the Visigothic kingdom. The Visigothic kingdom was, it was just about internal conflicts. It was about civil wars, and there was no growth. There was no education. It was just a dark period for, let's say, Spain. But majority of the local populations, particularly in southern Spain, they viewed the Moorish rule as more favorable compared to the Visigothic kingdom that he had. They brought political stability, they brought agricultural innovation, they brought economic prosperity, they improved the standards of living for many people in Europe and in Spain at that time period. That is why they even call it the Golden Age. So other pieces claim that it was at that time that indigenous Iberians converted to Islam and integrated into the Moorish society. Those are the pieces that perceive and try to portray the Moors as Muslims who had just gone to Europe to spread Islam. The others, which are very few, show the Moors as black people who invaded Europe at that time, because Europe was in a very unstable, it was at a very unstable point in history. So the others perceive the Moors as people who just invaded Europe for political purposes and to bring civilization to that part of the world.
Geographer, musician, and astronomer in Europe. He introduced significant cultural changes, such as replacing gold dishes with crystal, serving meals in courses with desserts, and fashion that varied with the seasons. This period saw cities like Granada, Seville, and particularly Cordoba flourish with immense architectural, scientific, and cultural advancements. Cordoba, with its 1 million inhabitants, boasted a vast number of middle-class and noble houses, shops, and bookstores, exemplifying the zenith of Moorish influence in Europe. The history of the Moorish dynasties is a fascinating chapter that spans both Africa and Europe. In the Sahara, a king named Yahya ibn Ibrahim sought to convert his animist subjects to Islam. He enlisted the help of Ibn Yasin, a religious leader from Mecca, but Yasin's initial attempts at conversion were unsuccessful. After being rejected, Yasin found some success in Senegal, where he began to gather followers. Eventually, he launched a jihad alongside Yahya, leading to the formation of the influential Almoravid movement. The Almoravids, under Yahya's brother and successor Abu Bakr, expanded their empire significantly. This empire extended from Tangier all the way to the Senegal River. One of their notable conquests was the destruction of the powerful vitalist empire of Ghana in 1075, which unfortunately led to a period of chaos in West Africa and an increase in Arab-Muslim slave trading activities. Yusuf ibn Tashfin, Abu Bakar's cousin and successor, further strengthened the empire. Described as a man with brown skin and frizzy hair, Tashfin founded the city of Marrakesh and played a crucial role in expanding Moorish influence into Spain and Portugal. His empire eventually encompassed a vast area, including parts of modern-day Morocco, Algeria, Western Sahara, and Mauritania, with Marrakech as the capital. The Moorish rule, particularly under the Almoravid and later the Almohad dynasties, was a period of flourishing sciences and arts in Spain. However, by the early 13th century, they began to face defeats. The fall of Granada in 1492 marked the end of the Moorish dynasties. Similar to the situation in Egypt, many scientific archives were destroyed. Despite this, the knowledge that had been translated and spread across Europe played a significant role in sparking the intellectual curiosity that fueled the European Renaissance.
Yeah, so that is what one part of history claims. The part that the Moors who took over Spain, and of course, looking at the key aspect in the Moorish history, starting with the conquest of Iberia. Iberia is majorly Europe, which happened in 711 AD, where the Moors, under the command of Tariq ibn Zayed, defeated the Visigothic kingdom. The Visigothic king, his name was Roderick, at the Battle of Guadalete. The victory enabled them to control most of the Iberian Peninsula within a few years, where they established their capital in a place called Cordoba. Later on, the other key aspect of the Moorish history was the golden age of the Andalus and the Moorish rule. That was when the Moorish rule was at its peak. That's between the 10th and the 11th century. The Al-Andalus became the center of learning, culture, and science. The Moors made significant advances in mathematics, in medicine, in astronomy, in architecture, which greatly influenced Europe during the Middle Ages. That is between the 10th and the 12th centuries. That was at the peak of the Moorish rule, because they took over in 7th BC. So between now the 10th and 11th and the 12th BC, that was when it was at the peak. Before that is they started getting defeated at the 14th BC, and later their rule ended by the 15th BC. The other thing that we have to mention when we talk about the Moors is their cultural and architectural influence, especially the cultural influence, because in parts of, for example, in architecture, they left a legacy in the Iberian Peninsula. Example being how they built Granada, the Great Mosque of Cordoba, and the Giralda in Sevilla. The architecture, most of the architecture combined the Roman and Visigothic elements. The Visigothic kingdom is the one that they found when they took over. So you also have even some of the structures they built, there are still traces of them to date. And the other thing that you have to mention when you talk about the Moors is that, as I said, they ruled justly. There was religious tolerance, where they allowed Christians and Jews, they allowed Muslims to practice their religion. There was that tolerance and justice. Their decline and fall, after about 700 years, that is from the 7th BC to the 15th BC, that is when they started getting pushed southwards. And in 1492, Granada fall. That was when the fall of Granada happened, when the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella captured the last Moorish stronghold. And historians claim it was at that point in 1492 when the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella captured the last Moorish stronghold that the Moorish rule in Spain ended. They, however, left. This is one part of this. As I said, there are so many narrations of the same story, and everybody tries to portray them in ways that they want. The Muslims try to show the Moors as predominantly Muslim, and the conquest Europe, though back then it wasn't called Europe, and the conquest as a Muslim conquest, and they actually say it was the golden rule, the golden age of the golden age of the Muslims. That was when the Muslims ruled the world. The Muslims, of course, try to portray it as that. Majority of the writings that you're going to see on the same are going to say they were Arabs. They downplay the presence of Africans in the invasion, and of course even in the contribution that they contributed to Europe when they took over Europe, back then it being called the Iberian Peninsula. So everybody pulls the string on their side. We believe that the Moors were Africans. They were of African descent from the northern African part of Africa, and we believe that even the kings and the queens, the Moor kings and queens, who gave education, who gave culture, who gave civilization to the Iberian Peninsula, were predominantly black. We do not just claim that, but we show evidence for that. I showed you illustrations as old as the 15th century that show even the queen and the king of the Moors were black people. Most of them were black people. Most of the soldiers were black people. So the rule, the Moors, the Moorish rule looked like it ended at around 1492 when the Catholic monarchs captured the last Moorish stronghold. So as I said, the identity of the Moors has always, everybody has always claimed to know more than the other, with these people claiming that these were of this were of this. However, I think the best way to identify the identity of the Moors is just to look at evidence. You look at the time periods, you look at who lived where and when. I mean, for example, in 1492, as they were not in 1492, in 700 BC, as they were invading the Iberian Peninsula. Of course, you know, they came from that northern African part of Africa. Who was living there at that time? Was it the Arabs? Was it the Berbers? Who was living there at that point of time, that point in history? That is the only way you are able to establish between propaganda and the real African history. Because, for example, the Berbers were of African origin and they lived in the North African part. They were black Africans who lived in the region of the Sahara, the North African and the West African part. So now I can share the other video that I wanted to share, that I started with that to first establish that the Moors were actually portraying the Moors as Muslims, as just Muslims and Arabs, is being historical inaccurate. Because at that time period, we have identified that it was predominantly Africans that were living in that part of Africa. And from the illustrations and from the historical evidence, majority of the Moors were Africans. So now the next video tries to portray the Moors as Arabs and Muslims, but of course there are some parts of the video that I want us to look at, apart from of course the ones that are not as accurate. So the Granada is a very focal point when we talk about the Moors, because it was actually the part that was captured before the Moorish rule ended. It was a place that they set up in southern Spain, in Iberia. Then it was a center that they set up, and especially during the peak, that between 10th and 12th BC, it was during the Andalus. It was an area that they set up as a cultural center, as a center of learning, as an educational center. It was where they advanced mathematics, and of course, it was it became developed and more than it was before they came, because as I told you, even majority of the people, majority of the local population came to prefer the Moorish rule over the rule that the Moorish found when they invaded the kingdom that they found, over the Visigothic kingdom, the Visigothic rule.
Is 1492. Christopher Columbus is about to embark on his world-shattering voyage to the Americas. And on his way to the coast, he stops off here at Granada. He's the honoured guest at a ceremony hosted by the King and Queen of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella. They are celebrating a grand victory. Up until this day, Granada had been ruled by Muslims. But Isabella has managed to wrestle control from them.
I think this video starts immediately after 1492, just when Isabella and the other Catholic monarch has just been able to conquer the Moors. That is around 1492, heading to the 1500 BC. They have just been able to conquer them, and now the Moorish rule in Spain and in Europe was coming to an end.
Ferdinand and Isabella's victory marks a turning point for Spain and for Europe.
Back then it was called Iberia, the Iberian Peninsula.
The Middle Ages are over, and the West is about to embark on a new epoch of power and discovery. We tend to think of this as the beginning of an era. In fact, it's the climax of a forgotten chapter in European history, the rise and fall of Islam in the West. It was Rudyard Kipling who wrote, "East is east and west is west."
But as you heard, before we continue, as you heard, the video starts with Christopher Columbus passing by Granada just after the Moorish conquest. The Moorish rule is coming to an end. And historians claim, I'm using the word some every time because historians disagree with each other every now and then. They claim that even Christopher Columbus borrowed from the writings and the architectural work and the mathematical work and the navigation work of the Moors in order for him to, as he was seeking for a route to India, that is when they claim he discovered America, they claim that he used navigational and mathematical works from the Moors to succeed in doing that.
But never the twain shall meet. And it's a worldview that still has currency today. Islam and Christianity seem to have become ideological monoliths, citadels whose gates are firmly closed to one another. But they haven't always lived such separate lives. In the year 711 AD, Muslim forces invaded Spain and created a society so rich and so powerful it was the envy of the known world.
And so it's the story is being given by a white woman, and not to be racist, but it's not going to be as accurate as it should be. So whenever she says the Muslims, the Islam, the Muslims invaded, the Muslims did that, replace that with the African Moors. Not that she's referring to the Berbers and the Moors who are predominantly African, but of course they try to hide that from history and they try to show that as just the Arabs, and I don't know how they explain the presence of, because we know, and we know for a fact that majority of the Moors were Africans. So whenever she says the Muslims invaded, I don't know, the Iberian Peninsula in the 711 AD, whenever she talks about the golden age between the 10th and the 12th BC. She's referring to the Africans. They just try to hide that fact from history that the Moors were of African descent. They were Africans. They were black. The historical pieces actually say they were exaggeratedly black, to a point that the only white part in their body was their teeth.
This wasn't the rigid, ferocious Islam of our imaginations, but a progressive, sensuous, intellectually curious culture that for a number of spine-tingling years looked set to sweep through the whole of Europe. It is an incredible story, but one that has been systematically written out of history. After the Catholic monarchs took over the city of Granada, they began to destroy all evidence that the Muslims had ever been in Spain. In the following century, the Spanish authorities persecuted and expelled 300,000 Muslims and burned as many as 1 million Arabic books. This was an astonishing act of ethnic cleansing. It put an end to a civilization which had flourished in Spain for 700 years. These people have become known as the Moors. Propaganda, sparked by the Crusade, has given us an enduring image: the diabolical Moor, a dark-skinned, savage, alien enemy.
And yeah, so when it comes to the murders, when it comes to the killings, when it comes to the propaganda part of the Moors, they want to portray the Moors as murderers and killers and dictators who invaded peaceful land and took over it. And when they want to portray that, the person holding the swords with the blood is black. At that point, they agree that the Moors were of African descent. The Moors were Berbers. The Moors were from North Africa. Yep. When it's propaganda and when they want to show the negative side of the Moorish rule, then it becomes look at that image. Then it becomes
Said has given us an enduring image.
Then it becomes diabolical Moor, a black Moors of African descent. But when they want to show the other side, when they want to show how beneficial and just, and when they want to show the positive side of the Moorish rule, then the African Moors are portrayed as slaves. They say that they were Mohammedan Africans. They were slaves that had been taken over when the Arabs invaded invaded Kimi, invaded Egypt and that part of Africa, and they fought for 30 years. There was a 30-year battle between the Moors and the Arabs took over. And of course, when they took over, they now assimilated the Africans into Arabic and Islam, and they together fought in the Iberian Peninsula. So when they want to show that part of bringing about technology, bringing about education, bringing about architecture, bringing about navigational works that were even later borrowed by the likes of Christopher Columbus, then the Moors immediately become Arabs. But when the Moors are killing people, they immediately, when in propaganda pieces, they immediately become black.
A dark-skinned, savage, alien enemy. But this character is a complete invention and tells us nothing about who these people really were. Now, archaeologists and historians are starting to piece together the real story of the Moors in Spain. They're uncovering the remains of hidden cities, discovering the role of Muslims in the revival of the classics, and decoding the meaning of Islamic buildings. A fascinating picture has emerged. I'm going to use this new research to explore what happened when East met West in Europe. If there is one place which challenges the stereotype of the treacherous, bloodthirsty Moor. It's here, the Alhambra Palace in Granada. The Alhambra is one of the most complete medieval Islamic palaces in the whole world. It was built by the Muslim kings of Granada in the 14th century at the height of their power. Its name means the red one because the dark surrounding soil has given its stones an earthy reddish hue. The marvel of the Alhambra is its mystery. Not a single account of life here survives. All its archives were incinerated in the fires of the Inquisition. But the Catholics couldn't bring themselves to destroy this place. The Alhambra is one of the wonders of the medieval world. And by preserving it, they've kept a box of secrets that we can use to decode the civilization that built it. Inside the palace walls, the architecture is breathtaking. Although the aesthetic of this courtyard is quite cool and minimal now, in its heyday, it would have been a riot of colour. Granada was very famous for producing silks. And you've had silk hangings billowing in the breeze, and silk cushions and silk rugs where people laid out to eat their dinner and to listen to music. And in fact, it's only when you get down to rug level that you appreciate one of the bits of magic of the place. Because from down here, this pool acts like a kind of infinity mirror, and the whole of the palace just looks as if it's suspended in water. Every detail of the palace decoration seems to be part of a scheme. Row upon row of intricate geometric patterns are carved into the woodwork of the walls and windows. This is the throne room. It was the symbolic centre of the palace, and here the Sultan had a kind of psychological advantage over his subjects. Whereas he'd have stood here in an eerie silhouette, they'd have been blinded by the light that came streaming in through these brightly coloured stained glass windows. The 19th century writer Washington Irving observed,
"It's impossible to contemplate this abode of Oriental manners without feeling the early association of Arabian romance. One almost expects to see some dark eye sparkling through the lattice. The abode of beauty is here, as if it had been inhabited but yesterday."
But this is far more than just a beautiful building. There's a specific reason why it feels so harmonious. The men who built it had a knowledge of complex geometry which had originated in the ancient world. The first man to set down these mathematical principles was the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. Pythagoras saw numbers everywhere in the universe, but his brilliance was to understand the importance of the ratio between them. Professor Antonio Fernandez Puertas has spent his life studying the Alhambra. He's discovered that the whole of the building, from the ground plan to the wall decoration, is based around one single ratio.
I think everything is so perfect because everything is under control of the proportion and very, very simple. You notice that there is something magic about these buildings. There is something marvelous in your surroundings. But it's very, very simple. It's the relation between the ground and the elevations of the buildings. It's as simple as that. The king ordered a new palace. He has a limited area to build the palace. To west, east, and south, he was limited. Then he did something ingenious and beautiful.
The King of Granada asked his architects to harmonise each and every space within the palace according to a single set of proportions, a family of rectangles, each related to the other.
If you want to get proportional rectangle, you have the same base. Take the diagonal, put it up.
Yes.
And
I think I'm Whenever I watch this and whenever I look at the pyramids of Giza, whenever I look at African architecture and architecture that Africans, because these were Africans made, drew, calculated, and then I look at the period of sleep that came after that, and of course now the European invasion later on, starting with we can talk about the Portuguese invasion of the coasts, and of course later, much later, the colonization that came about now in the 18th. When I look, I'm always amazed at how advanced we were as Africans in terms of mathematics, in terms of architecture, in terms of culture, in terms of everything. And when I look at that and I look at that now, at how back, a bit left behind we are by the world, to a point that we have to depend now on Europe for each and every provision that we have. Yet, not so many years ago, Europe and the rest of the world depended on us for literally everything. Then I'm always amazed at how advanced and brilliant we were at this period of time, to a point that we were the ones who are giving these people civilization they did not understand. They were, the way they refer to Africa as the dark continent, they were the dark continent. They were in darkness before the Iberian conquest. And we went there, we gave them education, we gave them culture, we gave them civilization, we gave them their architecture, we gave them their infrastructure. I'm always amazed at how brilliant, because some of the works that were built by Africans, they can't be explained to date. For example, I know we're going to talk about the pyramids of Giza. For example, the pyramids, they're such magnificent pieces of architecture that many years later, not even architectural companies right now, building construction companies, can replicate what was done then, even with all the technology we have, with the AIs, with the technological advancement, and of course with all the education that we've had. Construction companies still can't be able to replicate what was there. So when I look at this period, that period of up to until maybe the 15th century or later on, before Africa got into the period of sleep, and now that period of sleep was when anybody could have now taken advantage of us, because we lost it. I can say we lost it. We were no longer what we used to be. And even when they came later on with the invasions and everything, you are amazed by things. They were coming to show us things we had already shown them before. And for the fact that this part of history is always hidden from the people and the African people, and we are made to believe that we were always back, we are always a step behind, and the Europe and the other races were always steps ahead of us, while in reality we just went into a period of sleep. We just went into a period of sleep for some time, and we were left behind by the world. They advanced what we had given them, because majority of the architecture and the advancement, even in architecture and infrastructure that we see in Europe, was replicated from what the Moors gave them. Education was given to them by the Moors who are of African descent.
You've got successive rectangle, proportional rectangle.
The key to the Alhambra's design is the simple relationship between the side of a square and its diagonal. If we use the diagonal to make a rectangle, and then the diagonal from that rectangle to make another, we get a progression of rectangles. The fourth rectangle is double the size of the first, and the diagonals in this sequence are in fact the square roots of 2, 3, 4, and 5. A magical sequence. And are they doing all this just with 2 set squares and a piece of string?
Yes.
That's very clever.
Yes.
And I always try to we're gonna get back into that video because I had already started talking about this, about the period of sleep that happened, and I personally think the period of sleep came from about the 15th century. That was when the Moors were defeated in Iberia, in Europe, in Spain. That was when most of the powerful kingdoms and civilizations that we had in Africa were collapsing now, and Africa was no longer now even a trade hub as it used to be. So it was a period of decline, especially the part just before the European civilization. And it wasn't colonization, it wasn't even many years, it didn't even happen for many years. And I'm glad Keith has joined because there are so many things I wanted to understand. So the period of sleep, I personally think, started at around the 15th century because I understand the Moorish rule ended in 1492 in Iberia, in Spain, in Europe. So that was when now the period of sleep began in Africa between the 15. That is when advanced, powerful civilizations such as the Nubia, the Ghana Empire, the Mali Empire, the Songhai Empire, they started falling, they started declining. And moving forward from the 15th century to now, up to until the European conquest of Africa. Now, after the Moorish conquest of Iberia in the 7th BC, we had the European conquest of Africa now, which
Liberia,
came.
Sicily, Liberia, Sicily, and southern Italy. The Moors ruled. They moved Sicily, Italy, and Iberia, which is now Spain, but when Spain then was called Al Andalus. They named it.
Am I correct in my thinking that the period of sleep in Africa started from around the
Oh,
15th century?
you understand the sleep period. Now you must have got some information. I know. I think it actually started before that, Demore. I think we start going to sleep. Yeah, and you must have came across some information. Yeah, we start. Okay, the bearer of light. Yeah. Um, no, I think we actually started going to sleep, Demore. I would say, because the Moors talked about this too. We were going to sleep. I think we went to sleep. We started going to sleep. I think maybe 2,000 years ago. I think
2000 years ago? When was that time period?
I,
What
I would
BC?
say I would say about 300 years after they had came into Kemet. I would say right before you.
But that was the golden age. Wasn't that the golden age
No,
between now
no,
the 10th and the
no,
12th BC?
no. The more our history go way back. See, you starting with cracker history. They tell you, oh no. The more our history goes all the way back to Atlantis when we were
When
the
did we when did we take over? When did we take over Iberia and Sicily, as you said?
okay. That's okay. Yeah, that's weird. Then okay, we took over. That'd be like 7-11. What year? Let me
Yeah,
see.
that is.
Let me see. What year did the Moors take over Sicily? Let me see. Hey
It is
Google. What year
711
did the
AD.
Moors take over Sicily? Not the boys.
This came back from a search.
827. Okay, so they took over Sicily.
Iberia
827.
was
According to Wikipedia,
Iberia
the
was
first
in
Muslim
711
conquest of Sicily began in 827, though it was not until 902 that almost the entire island was in the control of the Aghlabids, from their capital Kairouan, with the exception of some minor strongholds in the rugged interior.
Okay, so 827. They took over southern Italy and also Sicily. So about another. That means they were in Iberia for like 100 years before they decided to go take over Sicily but see the Moors knew they were going to sleep. They knew they were going through a sleep period. So that's why people keep talking about the Moors were Islamic. They were not. Were not
Yeah, they
Islam.
say that the Moors were Islam. They try to portray the Moors as Arabs and Muslim. They actually call that period the period of Muslim. They say it was the period of Muslim
Well,
uh, occupation, the
yeah, well
Muslim
you got
rule in
yeah.
Europe.
That's when Islam was coming into power. That's true. But the Moors kind of like rode to Islam because that was like the thing to be, like a fake Christian. Like they were like a fake Islam. So that was the thing to be. Because remember, their knowledge is not Islamic. That's why you have something called Sufi Islam, which is really just Kemetic science, right? They got a difference. It's not the same Islam everybody else worship. It's called Sufism, which is esoteric, which means because it's mostly Egyptian or Kemetic and Sudan and come from Kenya, all that region right there. That
Mm.
well, really just African. So what the Moors really taught was African spirituality. Wasn't what we call Islam today because you had Christian Moors, you had Muslim Moors, and the regular they want to group them in that little thing because Islam Islam was what they conquered under, but most of the Moors were just too smart to be Islamic. They were shit. You talking about a very they can't they're your last great keepers of the knowledge of African knowledge. It had nothing to do with any Islam. That's why you're like, what? This shit ain't Islamic. What's all this shit they talking about? You know
Mm.
how advanced. If we actually do a deep dive, but I think by the end, the more they were so fucked up. They by the end they were always asleep. They remember because they turned in on their own people. By the time the rule was over, the Moors were fucked up. They didn't think they were African anymore. They were talking about they were half Islamic and half because they'd all completely fallen asleep. And so remember because they helped go back and like you said, they helped and come back and destroy those kingdoms. Sun Guy, God, they go back with Morocco. At that time, that when Morocco was still black. You look at Morocco today, it's as white as shit. like, like then it was still black. So, but they go back and crush a lot of these kingdoms. But I think we were going to sleep way before that. No, the more the golden age, golden age would be Atlantis. When we had Atlantis, we were still Atlantis. You got to go see Atlantis. We were yes, that's when they got the white people now coming in and taking over because the culture is African. Arab culture it's a culture. Yeah, those you were somebody did at least got the black people right. A lot of they trying to make them white, how they steal your history. They're trying to make this all white people and shit. And that's a lie. It's all Africans. Yeah, Tariq, Zabin, Ziad, yeah, they're all Africans.
Because kid, they claim that now before the 700 BC, they claim that that was when the Islam, the Muslims from the other parts of the world, especially from that part of the world, the Gulf, now came into Africa in a bid to spread their jihad
Yeah,
manifesto.
that's
So
what,
they came into Africa, just a minute. So they came into Africa. That's what they claimed. And they found that most of the Africans in the northern part of Africa, especially Egypt, which was then Kemet, and of course the
yeah.
other part,
It was,
had either migrated or had intermarried. So they fought for that years. That is
but
the Arab.
at that time, not all Northern Africa, but Kemet was already really intermixed by them because remember you got the Greeks and then you had the Greeks and then you had the Romans come in and conquer Kemet. So like I was telling you yesterday, Kemet was becoming very weak and it was Cush that was always run up to protect his brother Kemet or his sister, his little brother Kemet, because you had invasions from what they call Eurasia coming into Kemet. They constantly kept coming in, and Kemet was not strong enough to defend itself. And finally, it fell to Persia. Damn flying shit. Fell to Persia.
Mm-hmm.
It fell to Persia, and then because Kush was not and at that time, I understand. And when we're talking about Persia, Persia was still African back then. Persia would be modern day Iran. Those people from there are not the original people. See, when we look at that, you got to notice that we're talking about still all African people back then. So Persia at that time was still black. All right, Persia. So you got Persia coming out conquering Kemet, conquering their cousins. They were still black at that time. That's why it was really a peaceful conquering, really, because you know.
But they don't now. History does not. The history that we read does not portray them as.
Oh
Does
no
not
no no
portray
no
them.
no
They
no
say
no
it
no.
was a war.
Right.
They say it was a war that lasted for 30 years. Before that, is Tariq won the war, and now that's how they explain the presence of so many
No,
blacks, so many Africans in the more conquest, the Saracen occupation of Europe. So they
listen,
say that
yeah,
when the Tariq, when the Arabs came into Kimik, and of course they were able to, they fought for 30 years against the Moors, but the Moors were overpowered because most of the Africans had either
exactly.
migrated
They were
or
already
intermarried.
exactly
So
the white.
they were
That's
able
the
to win the war,
those
and
that
that is how
that's when you
they assimilated
that,
the Africans into Islam.
exactly that's partly true. I'm getting that's partly true. So we got part of that's partly true because at that time, remember they were under they had so many. So at that time, it still was a majority black area, but it's a lot of mixture by that time because the Romans had been there for all these years, Demore, since 30 A.D. or some shit when Rome took over Kemet from the Greeks. So
Yeah,
you had a lot of admixture by that time, of course. So like I said, that's why you see the people up there today are not Egyptians. They're not committing. They're actually a mixture of Turks. See, when they came conquering, they white people said they had no culture. There's no beginning for them. They assume black identity, they assume African culture, then take it over and say they're the people, and they'll put white people as you. Because a lot of times I'm surprised they show them as black because they a lot of people try to show that the Moors as more moreno meaning black. That's what it actually means. They're trying to make them white people now, white Arabs. And we know they were Africans. So at that time, so you had the Turks who were bleeding in because we understand Turkey, all these places that you see today were not white people. So you have the Turks coming from what they call the steppes of Asia. Steppes of Asia, where you got what they call the Conquest. So the Turks. So when we see the Turks today, Turkey that wasn't called Turkey back then. It wasn't because it wasn't the Turks yet. You had the Conquest start to move south and westward. That's why you got all these Turkish states: Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. These are all Turkish people. So as they move on in, at that time, you had the Catholic Church that couldn't get the Africans in that area to worship the Jesus myth. And so what they do, they create a whole new religion called Islam. They create the shit from whole cloth. And then, because at that time, everybody knows Arabia wasn't called Saudi. It's Arabia. That was African territory from Yemen all the way down. So you have the Yemenis, which today you still see some black Yemenis, not many, but that's where you get the Arab culture coming out of what we call today Yemen. And so they tell them about this group of religion because remember at the time none of them can read or write. There was no so the Catholic Church creates a language to go with the religion, which is always smart because if you capture someone's mind with a language, whoever's born in that language, they're going to follow that religion. Because if you look at how old is the Arabic language? It's not old. It just comes in the same year you get Islam. That's why you know it's made up. There's no Arabic language before Islam.
So, Kit, they claim that before Tariq invaded Kemet and that part of Africa, most of the Moors were divided into two. They say that some Moors actually worshipped Virgin Mary because they had contact with the Romans and they had been converted to Islam.
I said I don't think they worship the Mother Mary, but they worship. See, remember, all that Christian shit comes out of African spirituality. All that shit.
They claim that part of them worshipped Mary, the other ones worshipped Amun.
They still exactly what I said. That a lot of them still kept. I don't think none of them worship that Mary shit. I think they just kept it as cover because at that time, like I said, the Romans were more powerful at that time. So they're like they say they followed Islam. I think they followed none of that shit. I think they always followed Amun.
Who was Amun? I've never heard of Amun until today. I learned about Amun.
What? You didn't know? Look. Okay, let me tell you. Okay, Demore.
I learned about Amun as I was researching for this show.
Okay, well, let me finish. Okay, I got you. Let me finish. Why do you think you say amen after your Christian thing? Amen is Amun. That's where it came from. Why you say at your prayer you say amen? That's what you're saying. Amun. You don't even know that's where it came from. So that's a
What?
Yeah. You didn't know that? Yeah.
No, you were told amen means May 8
No,
eat food.
no. I told you what you.
So be it.
I
Yeah,
told you what
amen
you
means
believe.
so
I
be it.
told you
That's
what
what
you.
they say.
I told you what you believe is a lie, Demore. Linguistically, I told you where it came from.
When you finish praying, you say amen to say so be it. So be
that
whatever. Okay, that's what
no,
we
that's
learn.
because that's what they fooled. I told Demore that came from your spirituality. When they took your shit, they couldn't tell she was worshiping Amun. Amen. That's where it comes from. That's who it is. So after your prayers, you're still worshiping because remember, Christianity comes out of the Amun religion, like I told you, comes out of African spirituality. That's what that is. I
Oh, yes.
yeah, yes, the Moray. Amun comes, that's yes. They should be able to tell you the truth. Yes, Amun comes from Amun. Amen. It's changed in language. Amen comes from because he was called Amen. Amun. That's who
They
he do.
actually, Muslims too say amen.
Exactly, Demore. Because that's where I just told you everything came from the African spirituality, from that area of Amen, Amun, I worship. Yes, I know that. That's what I've been trying to teach you. You ain't been listening to me on this time.
Let me see what the word amen, where the word amen comes, what the Bible claims that the original language.
You can't
Amen.
go by the Bible. The Bible. You gotta go outside the Bible to get the truth. Everybody knows exactly. Amen Ra is the moon. Yeah, it's moon, but it's not with the moon sun jibber jabber. That's not. It's the hidden one. See, go back.
What?
Go back to Hebrew. Amen. Yeah, moon yeah. Go back to.
What?
It's all from Kemet and really Kush. It really goes back down to Congo. Yes, it's the hit Amen Amun. And now when the Dogon say the same thing, it's called they name him Alma. It's the same thing because the Dogon are the priests from Kemet who moved out here thousands of years ago when they were invaded by white people too. You had many migrations, Demore, out of Kemet because they kept getting invaded. So a lot of the Africans would just up and leave and go to other parts of Africa. Yes, but Amen. Remember, Hebrew is Greek, Demore. Who wrote? I told you the Greeks couldn't read or write. Who wrote the Greek language? The Africans. Hebrew is Greek. So that's what Hebrew is Greek. The Greek language was created by the Kemites, the Africans. And that's why you get the name Amen Amun. That's what it means.
Okay, why did the Moors worship Amun?
Well, let me tell you. Okay, it's not a worship. It's called. See, that's why you can understand. See, that's why they took your spirituality. Amun is the hidden one. It's the name of the grand creator, right? That's what I'm telling you. That's why you keep saying Amen. You're still giving the same thing. Amen came from Amun. Okay? All these religions from the fake Hebrew nonsense, because the African made this for the Greeks. All these religions were made up from your spirituality, Demore. All of it. So they took. Okay, Demore, you're the most advanced people, Demore.
Wow. Kid, I actually googled what Amun means, and it says,
Hidden one.
yeah, it says it was an Egyptian personification of air and breath. Then it says synonyms. Amen.
Yeah. Where you came from? You think I'm making this up, Demore?
Wow. Wow.
That's why you're not taught none of your history, Demore. I told you when you learn your history, you destroy their mystery. Everything came from you. It's just a bastardized version. This is a bastardized version of everything. Your spirituality, since you were the most advanced people, Demore, people are like, wow, these Africans are so advanced, and they went the one with the creator of the universe and shit. They're so advanced and smart. They read. They technically advanced. And you got a bunch of savages. White people can't read or write. So wow. But Amen. That's why you say Amen. Amen lives inside of you. It's not that they're not worshiping a god, a made up god outside. They know Amun is the creator spirit inside of you, Demore. So it just meant hidden one. But of course, through the bastardization of creating these religions, because as the Greeks come into Rome, as the Greeks come into Kemet, Demore, they say, hey, make us a goddamn god. You niggas know about God. Make us into gods. And they just said, whoa, Jack, We don't make you crackers no God. Are you crazy? What you talking about? See, you make us a God. You make us into God. Oh, we'll start killing you bastards. So the Africans. So you have one group of Africans. He said, okay, we'll make you a God. And so that's when you get. I told you the first Bible is called the Septuagint. That's why you see it's in the Greek version. It says Hebrew Greek. They always say Hebrew. For years I didn't say. Well, I said, well, where's the original Hebrew version? And then as I studied, there's no original Hebrew version because Greek is Hebrew. Linguistically, see, if you know the linguistic science of language, going back to the etymology, like you're going back to etymology, learn that Amun came from man. Amen came from Amun. That's etymology, the beginning of something, the beginning of language. So as I went back to the beginning of language, I said, motherfucker, the Greek language, Hebrew is Greek. There's no, it's these goofy Hebrews, these black men, Hebrew's the ancient language and all that shit's a lie. Because you can easily prove it scientifically that Hebrew is Greek.
I'm still mind blown that we worship Amun unknowingly.
It's the hidden God within inside, Demore. That's what they took your. I tried to teach. I told you.
After all that, the God of Israel, we pray for 50 minutes, then we end up with Amun. Come on.
I told you once you learn real history, Demore, it destroys their mystery. You got a mystery of lies. They just went about. So you get the Africans create because you have Ptolemy II asked the black commissions to make them a religion. This is where you get the creation of the Hebrew religion. So type this in, say Hebrew is Greek. Linguistically. Say linguistically, Hebrew is Greek. And so is the time frame around the 2nd century? No, it's before the 2nd century. That's the third. No, when they start creating the Hebrew religion, it's the 3rd century BC. It's Ptolemy the. You have Ptolemy the first when they made the fake Jesus. That was Serapis, and his son wanted to be a god too. So that's when you get they actually made the Jesus shit before they made the Hebrew shit, but it wasn't a religion yet. It was just called Serapis Christos. So, it's complicated when you go back and how this history goes. You're like, this shit is crazy. When you know real history, you get rid of that fake mystery. So you understand that Hebrew is Greek. That's why the first Bible is in Greek. It's called the Septuagint, the book of 70. So you had 70 Africans, supposedly. That's how the story goes. But we know Ptolemy II in the 3rd century BC has his commissions, scientists, start creating this religion out of whole cloth. Because remember, that's why you go back and know that the shit's a lie that they made it up because Kemet didn't have any slaves. It was spiritually advanced. There wasn't no slavery. There wasn't no Hebrews being enslaved in Africa and let my people go and motherfuckers walking across the desert and all this crazy shit because Kemet didn't have slaves. That destroys the story if you know real history. Some of the advanced people who were upright spiritual, they didn't have any goddamn slavery. So you had people they said that the Hebrews left Kemet, left Egypt, and the Pharaoh said, let my people go. All those, and all the killing, that shit, Hollywood kills. God damn, this is amazing. You know good goddamn. So they teach you to hate your own self. Hate your African self. You know good goddamn Egyptian because they show them white. That's you. You're the Egyptians, goddamn, with no crackers in Egypt. Let my people go. All that crazy shit. So we know. So as you go back and learn history, know that Osorsiv is the story of Moses. Osorsiv. That's where you get the story. All these stories are made up. So you had the commissions took their own stories and made them into like allegories into this book. Let me see. What's this? I got his ass. Damn fly. See. Let me see. Hold on.
So worshiping Amun was just worshiping the creator of the universe.
Yeah, the God within. They just the God within. It's African spiritual. Let me see. or source. Let's say, who is the Egyptian priest Osorsip? There you go, Sorsip, the story of Moses, right? The renegade priest who the story of Moses is created from. Yes, exactly. Exactly. The renegade priest. See, this one, so they took real history, they made up fake characters for the cracker. That's where you get the Moses guy. Osorsip, let me go. So let me show you. So we know, see, now we're going to get real deep. The more he's about to get his mind fucked up now. Think his mind is fucked up now. See, he about to go real deep. Mind about to get really fucked up now. Because when you start getting to a source of, you get to start making, where do these white and Asian, where these people come from? Now you're about to get fucked up in the head. Now you're about to get really messed up. Where do these people come from? Because at one time, it wasn't about the planet but black people. Further you go back, it's black. Blacks ruled everywhere. So where do Asian people come from? Where do East Indian people come from? Where do Caucasian people come from? Yeah, you go back in your own history, these other people start popping up on your ass. Like, whoa, okay. This is when white people first come into history. They didn't exist. You're gonna start going down the rabbit hole, Demore. You're already going down the rabbit hole. Demore, I thought Demore knew Amun was Amen. Yes, Demore. That's what they. So that's why the Moors took that science into Europe. It's not Islam. It's still Amun. It's still the ancient African science. It's so advanced, and so that's what they call the Renaissance of white people waking up through the arts. They say, "Oh, the African learns all the things of Greek." The Moors wasn't in Greek. Wasn't in Greece. It's all African shit. They got to go back. They always try to attach themselves to some fake made-up white place. The Moors brought all the ancient science of Greece. No, they brought the ancient science of Africa. Not no fucking Greece.
After the end of the Moorish rule in the 15th century, that is after the Catholic monarch defeated and took over the Moors from the Moors, they banned a lot of texts and books.
Yeah, they burned not everything. Yeah, they burned. Yeah, you're right.
What are they banning exactly? African.
They got a little science.
Literature.
The science of
literature. Was it Islam literature? What was it?
No, not that Islamic shit. No. The real shit. The more we're so far behind. You imagine the more. I'm trying to explain to you. You come from an advanced people that knew far more than what we know today. The Moors is just like the last low budget remnant of like being low budget, because when they start creating the Christian religion, Constantine has you burn all the sacred texts of the Africans. Africans have all, he said, because they burned down the Library of Alexandria. So we talk about the knowledge, Demore, of the knowledge. Knowledge is so vast, Demore. I can't. What you learn, what we lost, we're actually dumb as fuck right now. The commission, the Africa knew how to. They made a powder that made things levitate. That's how they made them goddamn fucking pyramids. They could change the frequency and make things interdimensional. Africans knew how to talk to other entities in other dimensions. They knew about vibrational codes and electricity. See, this is just stuff, as Tesla told you, this is just we learned Egyptian, not really African knowledge. African knew how to goddamn fly already. And African, that's why it's all on the walls of Kemet. African, that's why they can't nobody build those pyramids today. None of those pyramids, can no construction company today build none of them. None can build none of it. Can build none of it today. So
you were saying something about Constantine, who I understand died many years before even Constantine died before the invasion, right?
Before what now?
Constantine died before the Iberian invasion, right?
Died before they did what? Say it again.
I'm saying, didn't Constantine die before even the Iberian invasion?
Oh yeah. Constantine died in 300 CE. The common at 300. There was no Islam yet before Constantine died. Yet Islam didn't exist yet. You had Constantine, who was
a Christian.
no, he never believed in none of that shit. That's
But they say he was the first emperor to convert to
of course. That's what they
He's
gonna say.
actually the one who commissioned new copies
Yes,
of
he
the
created, but
Bible.
he didn't believe in
Well,
it. He was
uh-huh.
he didn't believe in none of it. He was commissioning it because he wanted the power. He said, "Okay, how can I take this African shit, this Amun shit, and merge into a religion for power?" Because when his empire, he had too many. He said, "I have too many grouping religions. I needed. When you want
Mean,
power, the more you want to organize stuff. You want things organized. So
yes,
you want
we're talking about the 300 BC or something, and that is in it was
300
the Roman
CE,
yeah
300,
300 AD.
yeah, CE,
Yeah,
Common Era.
yeah.
It'd be CE.
So we're talking about the 300 AD, and Constantine is in Europe. He's in
You
Europe,
never
right? What was
know. No,
happening?
he's not in Europe. He's still in Asia Minor. He's not in Europe. He's what you call today with Turkey. That was called his city was called Constantinople.
Hmm.
Look up this real quick. Look up the Hagia Sophia. Say images of the Hagia Sophia.
What was happening in Africa at that time at 300 AD at that time?
At that time, okay, that's what I'm trying to tell you. At that time, he was ruling because you had something called the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine was part of Rome. So Byzantium. Okay, remember, okay, that's what you gotta understand. Let me share my screen real quick, Demar. You look at my screen so I'll show you what was going on.
Okay, let me pull this down because I'm already.
Let me show you, let me share my screen real quick. Let me see. Images of the Byzantium Empire. Okay, there we go. We had the first. Yep, they gave me the Hagia Sophia right there. So let me share my screen. Okay, so at that time, so when we're talking about Byzantium, I'm still in the dark anyway. I'm trying to turn my camera, but that's on anyway. So, okay, so when we're talking about Byzantium, we're really still talking about the Roman Empire. So let me go here. Let me know when you guys see my screen.
Yeah, it's up.
Okay. See, so this is the Hagia Sophia, your first church. Boom, the Constantine. Boom, this very first church.
What time period are we talking about?
Let me finish. I told you this your 300. When you talking about your 300, your 300 AD or Common Era. Let me show you. Okay, so this time Byzantium. See, what you call Turkey today was not Turk. The Turks wasn't here yet. Turks were way up here in Asia, right? Called the steppes. This was Rome. It actually was the Roman Empire, right? So you had the Eastern Roman Empire and you had the Western Roman Empire. So the Western Roman Empire was Constantine. That was called Byzantium. See, you had the Byzantium Empire. So that was the Byzantine Empire that because Rome had Kemet. So all this is you had the split between the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire. And so the Eastern Roman Empire had started to become known as Byzantium, with Constantine being the first emperor of Byzantium. And then eventually became the whole rule of all the Roman Empire. So this is the Roman Empire. But the Eastern version was called Byzantium, the Byzantium Empire. Okay, and the capital was called what? Constantinople, with Constantine, right here. So Constantine says, hey, this African shit. Because all the fake religions of Rome were falling. Nobody would start believing in Remus and Romulus and Mithra. At that time it was Mithra worship. So remember the Christianity mixed with Mithra worship and Amun. You start mixing all this shit together with Mithra, Amun, and also what they call Hinduism and really Mithraism and Zoroastrian. Zoroastrian, all that shit's the same. Yeah, Zoroastrian, Mithra, and Amun. That's the merging of the fake Christianity shit. Constantine, whatever, put all this shit together. I need all my people. Since this is whole empire, I need people to worship this one thing that I'm creating. So when he started creating Christianity, he killed the regular Amun individual, what we call the Gnostic Christian. That'd be your Amunites. So he started, hey, you gonna worship my shit or you gonna die. He said, that's not the real religion. You can't be making no religion out of this. They said, yeah, I am. And if you don't, I'm gonna kill you. So when Constantine created the fake Christian religion, He closed, as the Lord said, with all the knowledge, he closed and burned down all those schools of knowledge. I can't have the real truth out there the more you not accepting my fucking religion. And remember, I told you, he murdered his son and his wife because they refused to accept the made-up religion that he did. How's it look? He's making a religion in his own son. You know, Constantine pretended to worship it, but his sons and his wife was like, man, we ain't gonna worship some made-up ass shit you made from whole cloth. So he couldn't have them out there not, he's making a religion for his empire and people not believe it, the shit. So he had his son and his wife murdered. You gotta go. And so he had all the people that were helping him create the religion who kept saying, hey man, you can't make this Christ, because remember it was Christ he's making. Christ is inside of us. Amun. Christ lives out inside of us. Christ is not a person. Everybody got his reach is the Christ. He said, nah, ain't no reaching no Christ. We're gonna make him to a person. I can't enslave nobody's mind and have people follow a thing if it's not a person. I can't say God lives inside you, then they're gonna be free. Remember, religion binds, it keeps you worshiping something outside yourself. So it binds you, it's control, it's power. So I need power. I'm not trying to goddamn talk about God lives inside you and all that shit. Fuck all that. That's not no power in that. I need you to follow this thing here. And so your first church is this one, your Hagia Sophia, before, because you see the Rome, instead of Roman Empire, wasn't in Rome. It was in Byzantium, because Constantine created Christianity. So this is your first Holy Roman church right here in Byzantium, called the Hagia Sophia.
It's still there up to date, right?
Yeah, still there. But they turned it into a mosque when the Turks took over in 1452, I want to say. They converted this into a mosque. That's why you see these things up there now. They converted it into a mosque. When it was so they put these poles up when they got control of Byzantium. They turned this church, because it didn't have none of this shit, turned into a mosque. Because this is your first Roman church. It's your first Roman Catholic church. This is your first church before it went over to Rome. The seat of power was in what they call, of course, the Turks changed the name of the city to Istanbul now, but this was Constantine's city, so this was Constantinople. So this is what the city was called, Constantinople. So let me see. Hold on. What year did the Turks? What year did the Turks conquer Byzantium? Yep, I was right. 1453. I said 1452.
1453. Yeah, according to Britannica, fall of Constantinople, May 29th, 1453. Conquest of Constantinople by Sultan Mehmed II of the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah. I said 1452, so I was close. Yeah, so that's when the Turks take over. And what the Turks really do, the Turks take over really the Roman Empire. They take over all that shit. So this when you get, as you said, the Arabs, but they're not Arabs, they're mostly Turks, merging with these other the Turks, what we call today Turks, Jamora. I mean, what we call Arabs today are just Turks. We classify themselves. They moved down in that area. Because look, I'm gonna show you the Turkish Empire. Say
that's where the name Turkey comes from, the Turks.
Yeah, that's where it came from, the Turks. Yeah, they're the Turks. That's what the name of the country, Turkey. But it's a whole Turkish Empire. Let me show you what. All they did was take over where you see Rome was. That's where you got both these motherfuckers you see in Saudi Arabia and Egypt and all that shit. They're Turks. They're Turkmen. We classified themselves as Arabs as they conquered inward. So you got. So let's say images of the let's say in the 1500s. Let's say images of the Ottoman Turkish Empire in the 1500s. And you see it's the same thing. So let me share my screen again. You'll see it's the same area, even larger. Let me share my screen again. Give me a second. Is my screen still shared?
Yeah.
See, as you see, that's all the Byzantium shit. See, all the Roman Empire, they just took over what Rome had, except for Italy. See, the Turks come in here and take over all the same shit. So, see, wasn't no Saudi Arabia, all this shit you call fucking Abu Dhabi and all that shit, these new, the EUA and all that shit, that was all Turkey, all the Turkish Empire.
The Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, the Ottomans are Turkish. Those are the Turks right here. So the Turks come in and invade Kemet and all that shit. They take over right here. That now these people reclassify themselves as Arabs because the Turkish Empire fell 100 years ago. Turkish
And
Empire.
and Jibazaba wanted to know, and I also want to know, how did the Pope come to be? Now that we
Oh,
just from the Hagia Sophia now.
okay. If you're talking about so let me get out of that. Okay, so you're talking about the Pope. Okay, so listen to this. Okay, that time. Let me get out of it. Okay, so guys, understand. So at that time, you had something. Okay, it took them like 800 years to make this goofy religion. Now, understand? They didn't all agree when they were creating this goofy shit. So
What
at
year are
first,
we
you
now?
had, huh?
What year are we now?
No, in the beginning, you guys say from Constantine all the way up to when was the last ecumenical council? I think it was like it might have been like 9. Let me see when was the last ecumenical council. Let me see. It goes like 800 years to more. Let me see. Let me hold on. Let me go here. What year? I said when was the last ecumenical? What year was the last ecumenical council? 787. Okay, yeah, AD. Okay, so it went for like 600 years of them trying to work out this Christian bullshit. Ecumenical council, what you see, the Council of Nicaea is your first ecumenical council. They were creating a religion, right? They were creating this Christianity shit with council, but they didn't agree because they didn't want to say, is this? Because remember, the first thing they made that Jesus was black because he was a son of our moon. They're like, no, we can't. What? They're like, no, is this Jesus God? Is it not God? Like, not motherfucker, God, no. So at that time, you had what they called a patriarch of Constantinople. There was no Pope yet. All that fake history. Oh, the Pope was way back in the goddamn before Constantine lived. There was no Christianity. There was no fucking Roman. There was no Roman church yet. Didn't exist. But they'll tell you there was a Pope back in when Rome was just an empire without the religion. There was no Pope because there was no major religion in no damn Italy. It's all a lot of make fake history with it. So at that time you had something called a patriarch. The first patriarch was an African because of course this shit comes from African spirituality. So your first popes or patriarchs were Constantine. So then, guys, you understand you had 4 major churches. Okay, you're gonna have a church, but the main church over everything at that time was this before you get those other churches are gone. But let me explain this to you. You had 4 major centers of Christianity. Of course, the number one was Constantinople. That's where they created it. So that was your first seat of power of the church. Then you had Rome, then you had Antioch, and then you had was it Alexandria, Egypt? Because that's where all this shit. So remember, so those 2 churches fall because they become Islamic. So your 4 churches, these are your first 4 main churches. Rome, because it's the Roman Empire, which is still Byzantine. You had the Eastern Roman Empire, you had the Western Roman Empire. Western Roman Empire was called the Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire was called Byzantium, but it's still really one empire, it's Roman. But at that time, the East was the most powerful. So seat of Christianity starts in Constantinople. So that's really it's called the patriarch. So as Byzantine is starting to lose power because you got the Turks constantly trying to invade that motherfucker and take it over. About I'm gonna say it took the Turks about 300 years to finally get that bitch. From probably about 10 AD, the Turks were constantly they're trying to break the back of the Constantine Empire. Because you see, eventually their empire became the Ottoman Turkish Empire. They were banging on that bitch. Banging on that motherfucker. So because they thought they could soothe them with this fake religion called Islam. Because the Turks weren't Islamic at first. They're like, hey, we can conquer these motherfuckers with this religion, conquer the mind. And so at that time, it's called the seat of power. And everything starts, because at that time, remember, you don't get the building of what you see today, the Roman Catholic Church, until the 1400s. Because what falls? Byzantium falls to the Turks. So the seat of power goes from Constantine to Rome. And at that time, you had a And Rome was trying, and before that, Rome was trying to get power because Byzantium became weak. That part of the Roman Empire, because they were getting banged on by the Turks. They were becoming weak anyway, and they wanted that power. So you had something called the Great Schism. This is where you get the Pope, guys. So you got something called the Great Schism. The Rome says we want to be the head of the church. We want to be the head of the church, not Byzantium. They're too weak. So it's something called the Great Schism. So the Great Schism, when you got Eastern Orthodox, which comes out of Byzantium, then you got the Roman Catholic Church. That's why you see everything from the eastward is called what? Orthodox Christianity. Everything's called Catholic. It still comes from the Catholic because the original church splits. It has a schism. It's before you get all your goofy.
So the Orthodox came from
schism.
No, the Eastern Orthodox came from the Turkish Empire, and the Catholic Church came from the Roman.
Not the Turkish Empire. When the Turkish Empire didn't exist, you mean the Ottoman Empire? Not the Ottoman. The Byzantine Empire. Not the Ottomans. The Ottomans didn't control that yet. But still, the Byzantine Empire. There was a schism. So they were trying to figure, because now the Rome said we want to be the head of the church, and we want to make a pope. And Constantinople said, "What? You crazy? There's no one person over the church. We're not going to accept that." And Rome was saying, "You're getting too weak. We want to be the head of the church." That's what you call it. It's called the schism. So that's when the church splits apart, because now the Roman side, because what they call Catholic, and they have a pope. The eastern side, which was Constantinople, the original church, they said, no, you can't have no head of no church. You can be a patriarch, but you can't be no seat of God. That's unacceptable. So that's what's called the Great Schism. That's why you see who is still Eastern Orthodox. You're Russians, all the things east. You're Russian, you're Polish, all the motherfuckers going back east. There was Eastern Christianity. That was your Orthodox coming out of Constantinople. They said, well, we're not going to accept any goddamn Pope. Because he had 4 different patriarchs. So look this up. Say, what are your 4 original patriarchs? Because the other 2 fell to the moon. I want to say it was Alexander and Antioch. I want to say it was Antioch, Syria, and Alexandria, Egypt. But they fell because the Muslims came in, Turks came in and conquered that shit. So it was only the 2 left. You had then Constantinople fell. So you only had the Pope left. So he's like, yeah, goddamn it, I'm the ruler, motherfucker. I'm the only one left. You guys are all conquered by these Turkish motherfuckers. Say, what are your original patriarchs? It's 4 of them, right? Or was it 5? Say, where are your original patriarchs? I want to say it was Constantinople with no Rome, because he wasn't a pope. He was a patriarch at first. I want to say it was Antioch, Syria, I think that's Antioch, and Alexandria.
Yeah, Alexandria.
Yeah, so it was
Constantinople, Alexandria,
yep.
Rome, and Antioch.
Antioch
and Rome.
And Rome, exactly. I got them right. So when all these other motherfuckers start falling, Rome said, "Motherfucker, we gonna lead you. You motherfuckers all falling to the Muslims. God damn it! You don't got any. Ain't no churches." So Alexandria fell, Antioch fell, and then finally Constantinople fell. So that left Rome as the power, even though the schism already happened, and the Eastern Church went further east into where you got Russia today, you got Poland, all that shit, Lithuania, Romania, all that shit there, Ukraine, fucking all them Eastern crackers, all that Eastern shit. That became your Orthodox Church, went back east, and the Roman Church went to where you got Western Europe, went to damn England, Spain, France, Germany, and all that shit, Italy, all that shit, because the other churches fell. See this, but see all this history. You get more history than most Christians even know. You know there was 4 great churches. Yeah, it wasn't a pope. It was 4 patriarchs.
Just know that the white man came and he brought Christianity. Amen. HR is here with the guest, so I'll let him.
Damn, I woke up late. We that late. It's our time to go already. I woke up late. I said, oh shit, let me get it. The more talking about here shit, let me go ahead. So now you know our moon, our man comes from our moon. That all you doing is saying All you doing is still saying the African God because all that shit came from you to begin with, Demore. All these Africans in these churches don't even know what's going on. Amen, amen, amen. All they doing is worshiping the God within. It's funny. You know, they don't know any history, Demore.
Yeah, and even the Bible itself says there was one point that they asked God who he was, and he said, "I am who I am."
Yeah, I'm hidden. I'm hidden. So you still put it is the hidden one. But actually, the God of the Bible is really not even our moon. They put it at the end of prayer. The God of the Bible is actually the devil. And it gets even deep because you got to go to the Gnostic text, Demore. This one is making the religion. See, we need to get to that. You got when they were first making the religion, right? The Gnostic text they had to hide because Constantine was killing everybody. So put up. So let me just show it before we leave. Let me see images of the Nag Hammadi. So if you go read this shit, you're like, oh shit, you know the God you worshiping is the devil. That's what images of the Nag Hammadi text. There you go. So this is the gospel. So these are your original Bible. Now the church said, these are heretics. You can't read these books. So these are your original books. The more right here. Okay. So Constantine was killing people who were still had these books right here. The Nag Hammadi scriptures, right? So they actually found them buried in Egypt. I think they found them like 60, 70 years ago, right? And they start reading that shit like, oh, whoa, whoa. They start telling you God is within, Christ is inside you, all the real teachings. They had to hide this shit. Remember, Constantine was killing everybody and burning all these books. So this is where your damn, a lot of your goddamn Bible come from, these texts. But it's not the Bible you read. It's not the Bible you read. You get the Nag Hammadi text, all that shit, the book of Enoch is still in there, all these other books in there, like, oh, motherfucker. See, the sacred Gnostic text. Because remember, Christianity comes out of Gnosticism, comes out of the African spiritual system. But he had to change it for power. He put all this other shit in there. That Mithra shit, that Zoroastrian shit, that Hindu shit, some Buddha. He mixed all that shit in. But you read these teachings, start reading the Nag Hammadi text, Demore. Go get that. That's your original. This is your original Bibles. You know that Constantine, the one out there, he killing motherfuckers. Let me see. Let me see this. Let me see. Why did Constantine started killing the Gnostic Christians? What did he actually do? Classically Christian. Yeah, he said, "Yeah, I get him all these teachings out there." Great Constantine the Great in Christianity. He said, "Who murdered the Gnostics?" We know who murdered the Gnostics. Who murdered the Gnostics? Constantine killed their ass. Say, motherfucker, you gotta get out of here. You can't be fucking up my new religion. Fuck wrong with you? You ain't fucking my new religion with you can't fucking my new religion with your African spirituality. Fuck wrong with you?
I've seen there's free PDF for the Nag Hammadi text online. Jiba told me it's free on the Internet Archive, and I've seen one. I think I'll start reading the Nag Hammadi text.
Let's read Nag Hammadi. So yeah, Nag Hammadi takes you deep within, and
it says that Jesus was himself agnostic Christian. He was agnostic.
Yeah, they would say because Jesus resides within.
And this explains the fact that Jesus didn't talk about the judgmental Old Testament God.
There's no hell. There's no Jesus returned. That Jesus returned that the God you worship is the devil. That's why they had to kill him. Why they kill these motherfuckers and burn them books. Remember, because the religion comes out of all that African ancient spirituality shit right there.
Anyway, let me let HR prepare for that.
All right.
Big shout out to everybody who was with me. Jiba, Jabba, Michelle. Who else was with me?
Sorry, I fell asleep last night, guys. I was knocked the fuck out. I said, "Oh, I woke up. It was 9 o'clock." I said, "Damn, I missed the show." I'm gonna do 2 today though. I fell asleep. Then I woke up. That's why I woke up, stayed up all night. I look and say, "Oh man, it's almost 3 o'clock in the morning. The more it be on an hour and a half. God damn." I woke up. I said, "Oh man, it's 5. Let me get up in here. He's doing his. Let me get up in here." But Anyway, let me let him go. Yeah, so yeah, guys, that's what's going on because see, the more he's learned all this shit, he's like, Amun? Is Amen? Yes. So when I was teaching them all this stuff, like, oh, Keith, are you a atheist? No, no atheist. No, this is a creator of the universe. You crazy?
I was like, this guy is going to hell, man. This guy right here is burning in hell. Special place, special studio apartment in hell.
There's no hell tomorrow. They come later. That's why they didn't have when they created the Hebrew religion. There was no hell, but the Hebrews don't believe in the hell. They come up. Constantine didn't even make hell up.
Majaba joined that show and was also commenting. Then General was good, and I said those are 3 people straight to hell. You, Jiba, and General.
No, Constantine didn't even make up the hell. That came later. Do all those ecumenical councils say, well, how do we get people to follow the religion if there's no punishment? He said, how do we get people if there's no punishment? The more how are you gonna believe in the shit through mind control if there's no punishment? So that came way after because they were arguing all the way to 747 about the attributes of this religion they were making. And so
hell is hell in the Nag Hammadi texts?
No. Hell, there's no such thing as hell. Hell is the earth is actually hell tomorrow because you live in the spirit realm. We fell in. Okay, I told you. Remember, you are in an illusion. This is an illusion. So the Nag Hammadi text knows that African that this is an illusion, does not exist. So where are you beaming? Where are you coming from in this illusion? They knew that death didn't exist. Okay, you are immortal. There's no such. Okay, now you're very logical. Okay, Demore. If you already exist, Demore, how can something not exist that exists? Getting your philosophical question. You already. How can something exist, Demore, and then not exist? If you exist, you've already existed, and that means you can never not exist. There's no such thing as non-existence. You've always. Okay, if you exist, there can be no non-existence. See, I'm giving you a paradox. Those are things non-existence. The African knew that. So this all comes from deep. And Nag Hammadi is not even really deep. It's actually the fall to sleep science, the more. Okay, when you read the Nag Hammadi text, remember, those are from Africans that are really falling asleep at the time. They don't even go back to where the real deep shit is at. They take parts of it, but it's only a fractionized version of the real from hundreds of thousands of years ago. When you were actually a god. You're a god, Demore. You're a god in a physical form. You fell in vibration. Now you in this meat suit. You're in this meat suit. What you were trying to do, the Africans were trying to do, they were trying to get back to being gods. How do we raise our vibration and get out of this fucking illusion that way? How do we get out of this goddamn meat suit? How do we go back to being gods? See, now we're gonna get deep. That's what you when you were studying African science, African spirituality, you were trying to, how do I go back to being a goddamn god? Because you fell in vibration. How do I raise my vibration to break free of this meat suit and don't keep coming back and reincarnating? How do I break this reincarnating state that I'm in? See, it gets deep because you were once the gods, and the Africans knew that. They fell in vibration. So their studies, Demore, for 50, 60 years, like 100,000 years ago, they were trying to become gods again. How do I get out of this fake suit right here? How to get out of this shit? How do I break free and become part of the ether? You see, the white man took away, that's in your periodic table. 100 years ago, you get something called the ether. You're an etheric being. That's why our hair is like it is, Demore. While you're here, you're an etheric being. That's why nobody's hair is like ours. You are an etheric being. Africa said, how can we get back to the ether? Like I told you, in science, you got what? Okay, properties of ice, Demore. You got what? These are the same properties, which is higher frequency. Water can be what? Mist, vapor, right? Vapor, and then it can be like a rain or a river, or it can be ice. Our bodies are now ice. So how can I get my body from ice to vapor? That's what they were trying to figure. How do I get my body from ice, which means the density in the 3D, this 3D shit. But how do I get my body back to the ghost form, the vapor, the spirit? Well, I'm God, goddammit. How do I get from here to there? Because you fell. Somehow the planet shifted, and we fell in frequency. See, so it goes even. That's what African spirituality is. How the fuck do I get back to God? How do I get back to being the God that I once was? How do I raise in vibration and get out of this goddamn meat suit? So that's what everybody. That's what all your teachers were all corrupted. So that's what it actually is. That's what African science is. Africans trying to get back to fucking God, and they knew it had something to do with melanin. How do I raise my melanin intake? This goes back to, remember, when we say spirituality, it's really science. Africans would figure out how do I raise my, because there's something about this melanin, and knew melanin was the key to life. How do I get more melanin in my fucking neural pathways to raise my vibration? They're trying to figure out how do I manipulate melanin and get enough in my body to break free of this fucking meat suit in the third dimension. So that's what actually, because there is no worship of nothing outside of you, because you are the God that you're looking for. It's inside of you. You are part of the creation. Creator is in you. You are that creation. You've always been here, Demore. You always had that spark. You're melanated. You've always been. You've always existed. There's never been no time you have not existed. There's never been no time you not exist. So when you read the Nag Hammadi, understand that's a dumbed down version of what you actually were. You'll get parts of it, but that's actually a dumbed down version. It's actually a dumbed down when you're falling asleep. But still deep. And then you realize, take you back to you being God, but it's all about your melanin intake. That's how valuable melanin is. The chemical key, the chemical key to light, and what makes separates from anything, because it's not the melanin even in our skin. It's the neuromelanin we had called uromelanin that resides inside of us that has hampered our vibration. That's why you see Africans are loving and kind. And we can be dominated by savage people because they come from, say, that's another story. Tamahu. Look this up. Let me just before we go. What the Africans do this. Say, what is the definition of Tamahu as the Egyptians called it? Let me see. What exactly? The Archons, the white race. So you're going to go down. Now you're going to go down this rabbit hole. What you're going to learn in the Nag Hammadi, Demore, is this right here. It's going to fuck you up. You're going to learn this right here. Where did all these other people come? The Archons, white people. Now because all these people didn't exist. So they called the traditions of the Archons white race, the white races. Your East Indians, and you're going to learn what Archons are. Okay, you got to learn what that is. That gonna tell you. I think they mentioned them in the Nag Hammadi. These white races, what they call the East Indians, the damn Asians, Chinese and Japanese, and the Caucasian. They call them the Archons. So you about to find out what that is, the white races. You about to go down this rabbit hole, baby. You're gonna go down that rabbit hole. Who are the Archons? You're about to go down that rabbit hole. The Africans knew that way back then. Called them the created races. Created by who? By what? Gonna get deep. It ain't gonna be your Christian Bible, I'll tell you that.
Anyway, I think we continue with this conversation on Saturday so that Richard can have his show. Big shout out to Kush King, also Jiba Jab, and everybody else was with me, and Michelle, and of course every other person. I hope you enjoyed the rest of your weekend. Join Richard in the next few minutes for a musical show. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, family. Much love.
The Archons, baby. The demons.